Absolutely. So yeah, just like you said, Tesla and Meta, I think one key thing that we need to remember is that this market correction or the market turbulence, I think, was brewing ever since the disappointing earnings reports. And then, of course, it was exacerbated by the Bank of Japan's high interest rate, the highest since 2007. And then on Friday, the US jobs report also drove fears of recession, triggering sell off of risk on assets. And then these are only the macro. What happened in crypto? So, what happened in crypto was the Jump Crypto, which is a trading arm of Jump Trading. And we know from on chain data, and thanks to the transparency of blockchains, is that it has liquidated $300 million worth of ETH in the last 10 days. So from July 25th until August 3rd. And the silver lining here is while the previous macro data has really impacted the global liquidity landscape negatively, this crypto specific event didn't really undermine the global crypto liquidity. Now we've seen that the total market cap of stablecoins, for example, is at $163 billion. So we can see now how macro events trigger sell-offs and how crypto specific events trigger. This is something a little bit new. Maybe in the later slides, we will dive deeper into how drawdown or drawbacks affected crypto. Yeah, that is on a very high level what happened on August 5th. Please, if you haven't already, just go to our YouTube channel where we had a very timely webinar on the market turbulence on Monday. In the next slide, we can talk more about what has changed since. So we mentioned previously that one of the major factors that were triggering the sell-off were the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. So what has happened? So yeah, to recap, on Monday, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken told the G7 that they should expect an Iran retaliation as early as Monday. So far, we haven't seen any news from that. However, we know that Hamas has elected a leader. Hezbollah is to launch attacks independently from Iran. And the US is preparing for a war. They are deploying warships and jets. And the anticipation continues. So why is that really related to Bitcoin? On Monday, when that happened, Bitcoin sunk a little bit. And we've always seen that Bitcoin react to geopolitical conflicts or tensions or inflationary conditions or riots very differently. This time, it has actually matched gold. The gold also dipped a little bit on Monday. So we will see how the markets will react, how traders will react to this anticipated moment. On the contrary, or on the other side, we have positive news. So the US, we have two major news or major indicators that would help the Federal Reserve make up its mind over rate cuts. So, for example, the ISM came in a few days ago indicating that the service sector is expanding, and that spurred some optimism that the economic situation will have a soft landing soon. Also, a few hours ago, the unemployment claims have also decreased. So that means that the unemployment rate will be a little lower. And they
Yeah, and
actually
when you
exceeded.
mentioned the unemployment rates, it's from the U.S. jobs-led claims, which came a lot lower than the estimations. I believe it was 233,000 claims compared to
Exactly.
estimations being to 40,000 claims. So quite
Exactly.
positive, which means that probably not, but of course there are other factors to consider, but probably
Yeah.
not. U.S. is near a recession. JP Morgan anticipates a 35% chance of happening by the end of the year. But I think we have also yet other indicator to consider as well, as you also rightfully put together, Japan, but also the fact that the VIX, which essentially measures the options traded on the S&P 500, came back down from 65 to 26, which is pretty much close to the average that we've seen towards the beginning of the year until now. So essentially, we're seeing a market rebound and recovery from what you're seeing now, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Right on. It's still a developing story, obviously, but we're headed towards good light. In the next slide, we will talk about the potential scenarios just
Love,
like we
I love that
said.
chart, by the way. I really love that table. It's a great table explaining the bull, neutral, and bear case scenarios. On the top side, you could see in green the bull, and in the middle, neutral, and then the bear case. But at the bottom, you could see the performance that we could be expecting depending on some of these events and metrics that could be shown to markets. Please, Dina, go ahead.
Thank you. No, absolutely. Yeah. So the best case scenario here, we are next Wednesday, we are expecting the CPI data, which is the key inflation data for the US. So with the ISM and the jobless claims that we've just talked about, things are looking a little bit optimistic. Maybe inflation will be cooler than expected. If it is, then it is very bullish for our asset class. Also in September. So the market has priced in, or they're predicting that a rate cut is happening in September. However, there is some disagreement to how much will the Fed cut. So just a few days ago, it was 89, 90% 50 basis points cut. However, now I just checked and it's almost a tie, 56.5% probability that it will be 50 and 43.5% it will be 25. So we think it will be very bullish if it's, of course, if it's a 50 bips cut, and it will be a little bit neutral, but underwhelming if it's 25. One thing that would definitely overshadow it or make markets more excited is the US presidential race. On September 10th, if I remember correctly, we are scheduled to have a presidential debate between Donald Trump, who has been making strides and progress, a lot of progress with his promises to have a crypto-friendly presidency, also picking JD Vance, who is a big crypto proponent, but he will be debating Kamala Harris, who is still yet to disclose anything about her views on crypto. However, she's been in talks with many legislatures and many Democratic policymakers to just make up her mind and how to steer away from the infamous adversary position that Joe Biden has taken so far. So we will see how that happens, and this is for me the most exciting. And the news just came out a few days ago, so we might hear some good news about Kamala Harris, and that's when the debate will be most exciting. The bear case scenario or the worst case scenario is if the tension in the Middle East, we still don't know how things will look. And of course, like any Middle Eastern war or conflict, people tend to exaggerate. But we know that in last April, Iran was also threatening to, and they actually launched an attack, but it was limited. So we don't know what will happen. And Iran has been saying that they don't want to put the world in war and stuff like that. So we will see what happens, but it will be a little bit bearish for our asset class, only on the short run. I think in the long run, it is actually very bullish. It should turn very bullish because people will realize that their currencies are getting devalued, just like what happened in Egypt and Turkey over the past few years. And they'll want to invest in something like gold and like Bitcoin. But we will see how that will materialize. And in theory, of course, that makes sense. But in practice, we will see. Also, if the inflation in the US takes a downturn unexpectedly, it will also mean that there will be a liquidity crunch, or there will be like a restriction, or the appetite in risk on assets will really decline, especially if the indicators point towards a global recession. And yeah, but it is important to note, like I duly notes here, that past performance are not indicative of future results. However, they could serve well as a reference point.